No, again, we still have a few minutes, but we're discussing this issue. Do you feel that you've discussed sufficiently the issues of purpose, human purpose? You're actually giving a lecture on that in 2 days, and also the issue of morality. Are you comfortable that you've discussed that?
Yeah, I think we should go to questions.
Okay. Well, very good. Yes?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Okay, the first question is for Dr. Lennox, and it is, Professor Lennox. How do you explain the similarities between organized religions, and why do you feel that the Christian faith is in some way more viable than the others?
That's a question for me?
Yes, indeed.
How do I explain the similarities between organized religions? I think that when we look around the world, there are various aspects to any given religion, and one of the very important ones is the moral aspect. And as has been pointed out by many people, if you look around the world, you find a common moral pool. In fact, you mentioned this in your book. A common moral pool that people of all faiths or none will respond very similarly to the same kind of moral questions. Now, to me, the explanation for that is the one I've just given, that each person is a moral being made in the image of God. And therefore, as I look around the world, I would expect, whether people believe in God or not, that they've a roughly similar morality. So there are similarities at that level. But then you will get very big differences when it comes particularly to the question of the basis for a relationship with God. And that tends to diverge. There are some religions that say that a relationship with God must be based on human merit. And as many probably know, Christianity says the exact opposite, that the relationship with God comes through trusting Christ because of what he did through his cross and resurrection, and is not merit but is a gift. I don't know whether you want me to expand further on that, but that's basically
you've got a bit of time. Both of you do. If you
what
can
was
take
the second part of the question again? Just
What's so special about Christianity?
Yes. What distinguishes Christianity? Why do you feel that the Christian faith is in some way more viable than the other religions?
I see. Well, I think for me the question is, very aware of Richard sitting here to my right, is whether it's true or not. And Christ claimed to be the way, the truth, and the life, and either that's absurd nonsense or else it's true. Now, I'm convinced it is true. Why is it true? Well, if we take the three great monotheistic religions and their attitude to Christ, we'll find that one of them believes that he died and didn't rise, the other believes that he didn't die, and Christianity believes that he both died and rose again. Now, that's something that I feel that we can access by history. The second point is this, and it's probably the most important point. It's that it seems to me in a way that Christianity is not competing with other religions. Let me try and explain that. Because as I understand the New Testament, what Christ offers me is something that no other religion offers me. Many religions offer me a path, a moral path to follow, which may be excellent. But what Christianity offers me is a radical diagnosis, which some people react against. The fact that I find myself disjointed, I find myself, I don't even keep my own standards and so on. And I find also that the relationship with God has been broken, and there is need for repair, there's need for forgiveness. Now, in Christ, in his death and resurrection, I find that there's an adequate basis for forgiveness so that I can be certain of my relationship with God and know it. Now, I don't find that anywhere else. I find wonderful morality and all the rest of it. And I think it's very important that we respect people of other faiths. But if you ask me what makes the difference, that's the central one. There are many others.
Okay. To Professor Dawkins, do you think that there is no purpose in religion?
No purpose in religion. Well, as I said before, individuals have purposes, and many individuals have purposes that are deeply shot through, sometimes literally, with religion. there are people in the world, very large numbers of people, whose entire life is guided by religion. Everything they do is guided by religion. So the answer, of course, is yes, there are purposes in religion. I think that it is a tragedy that people waste their lives devoting it to such fanciful, imaginary purposes, but I can't deny that they do.
Over to Professor Lennox. If we accept that an omnipotent designer is responsible for our existence, then how do you explain the deficiencies in our design?
Well, of course, the question assumes that there are deficiencies. All design involves compromise with all kinds of different constraints and so on and so forth. So I think before I rush to say there are deficiencies in our design, I would need to know what the ultimate purpose of the designer was and all the rest of it. So it's very difficult to respond to that. I believe myself that the ultimate designer is God, but I also believe we live in a damaged universe, and so we see around us, alas, all kinds of things that are a result of, well, human evil as a result of the disjointedness of creation and so on and so forth. But that would lead us into a very much deeper question of the problem of moral evil and pain.
To Professor Dawkins, how do you explain the origin of the laws of physics?
I do not know the origin of the laws of physics, as I've said again and again. What I do know is that whatever they are, and I've said this again and again, whatever they are, it certainly doesn't help to propose that they were designed by a conscious intelligence, because that simply makes a bigger question than you've solved. Now, the laws of physics, to break that down a little more, it has been suggested that the laws of physics are extremely fine-tuned, and that if they were any different, the universe as we know it wouldn't exist, stars wouldn't exist, chemistry wouldn't exist, biology wouldn't exist, and we wouldn't exist. And theists are tempted to say, therefore, the laws of physics must have been designed in such a way that they are exactly fine-tuned to bring us into existence. Once again, that is a non-explanation, because it leaves open the explanation for the designer. There are many physicists who explain that by saying, well, with the so-called anthropic principle, saying that we could only exist in a universe which has the right laws and the right constants to bring us into existence, and therefore the fact that we're talking about it determines that we must be in such a universe. That's the anthropic principle. There are versions of it which make it a bit more plausible. For example, the multiverse theory, that there are lots of different universes, that we live in a kind of bubbling foam of universes, and each bubble in the foam has a different set of laws of physics. The vast majority of those laws of physics are not conducive to giving rise to us. A tiny minority are conducive to giving rise to advanced life forms. And once again, the anthropic principle comes in. We could only exist, we could only be in one of those bubbles that has the necessary laws of physics to bring us into existence. And therefore, obviously, since we do exist, since we're talking about it, we must be in such a universe. I haven't answered the question, but what I hope I have done is to show that whatever else the answer is, it cannot be God.